This video is about solving for sides of a triangle using our trig functions. So remember, a mnemonic device that is helpful for solving using trig is so, co, so. So in this, we remember that sine is equal to our opposite over hypotenuse, cosine is equal to adjacent over hypotenuse, and tangent is equal to opposite over adjacent. So we're going to solve for x in problems 1 through 3 and solve for x in problems 4 and 5, always rounding to the nearest tenth. Anytime you're finding the side, you always want to round to your nearest tenth. So in number 1, based on our 38-degree angle, we are going to label our side. So I always label opposite and hypotenuse first, and then the third side has to be the adjacent. So the opposite's across from the angle, the hypotenuse is across from the right angle, the adjacent's the leftover. In this case, we have a number or a variable on the opposite and the hypotenuse sides. So the trig function that uses opposite and hypotenuse is sine. So we're going to have the sine of 38 equals x over 15. Now, in order to get x, we are going to multiply by 15 so that we get the x by itself because these cancel out. 15 sine of 38 is equal to x. Now we go to our calculator. Make sure before you enter this in your calculator, you hit mode and make sure that the black box is around degree. If not, you can arrow down to the word degree and hit enter. So we have 15 times the sine of 38. Rounding to the nearest tenth, that's going to get us 9.2. So x equals 9.2. In number 2, with our angle of 56 degrees, we have opposite, hypotenuse, and adjacent. This time we know information on the adjacent and the hypotenuse. So we have the cosine of 56 equals adjacent over hypotenuse. When the x is in the bottom, the x and the trig function are going to switch spots, so we are dividing. We have x equals 21 divided by the cosine of 56. 21 divided by cosine of 56. That's going to round to our nearest tenth, so the 5 rounds up, so we are at 37.6. In number 3, based on our angle of 24, we have opposite, hypotenuse, adjacent. We know information on the adjacent and the opposite side, which is tangent. So the tangent of 24 is equal to the opposite 14 over the hypotenuse x. Again, the variable's in the denominator, so we are dividing. So x equals 14 divided by the tangent of 24. So we get 31.4. So x equals 31.4. In 5 and 6, we have the same problems, we just have 2 variables. So now we want to still label our sides. So across from the 32 is opposite, across from the right angle is hypotenuse, and our last one is adjacent. If we are solving for x, we want to use the side with the number, which in this case is the opposite, and the side with the x, which in this case is hypotenuse. So the trig function that uses opposite and hypotenuse is sine. So we have the sine of 32 equals opposite over hypotenuse. Because x is on the bottom, we are dividing. So 9 divided by the sine of 32. And this is going to round to 17.0. Make sure you put the 0.0 to show that you rounded and that's not an actual exact answer that we got. So x is 17.0. Now, when we solve for y, we don't want to use the side we just found because we rounded, so that's going to throw off our answer. So we want to go back to the 9 because that was a number that was given to us, and the y. So opposite and adjacent is tangent. So the tangent of 32 equals 9 over y. So in this case, we're also dividing. Y equals 9 divided by the tangent of 32. 9 divided by the tangent of 32. we get 14.4. In number 5, based on our angle of 75, we have opposite, hypotenuse, adjacent. If we are solving for x, we are using the adjacent side and the hypotenuse, which is cosine. So the cosine of 75 equals x over 24. Here we are multiplying. So we have 24 cosine of 75. When we multiply 24 cosine of 75, we get 6.2. When we go to solve for y, we're still using the hypotenuse because it has a number and the opposite side, so this is sine. The sine of 75 equals y over 24. We are going to multiply 24 sine of 75 equals y. So y equals 23.2. In number 8, in number 6 and 7, what happens if we don't have angle measurements? So if we don't have angle measurements, we can't use trig, but we already learned something before. So if you have the sides but no angles, you need to use Pythagorean theorem. So Pythagorean theorem is c squared equals a squared plus b squared. So in this case, we would have 15 squared equals x squared plus 12 squared. Remember, the hypotenuse always goes by itself. 225 equals x squared plus 144. X squared equals 81. So x is 9. In number 7, we have x squared. That's by itself as the hypotenuse equals 14 squared plus 50 squared. So we get x squared equals 2,696. When we take the square root, the square root of 2,696, which is going to simplify to 2 root 674. Now, the next couple of problems, we're going back to the trig ratios, but we don't have a picture, so we have to draw a picture and really pay attention to the details here. So we're always going to draw a right triangle. So in triangle RST, angle T is 90. So we want to put T by the 90-degree angle. R is 63, so it doesn't matter where we put it. I'm going to put R in the bottom corner with 63 degrees, which means the last side is S. ST has a length of 11. Find RS. So based on our angle, we have opposite, hypotenuse, adjacent. We know the opposite and the hypotenuse, so we are using sine. So the sine of 63 is equal to 11 over x. Because x is in the bottom, we're dividing. X equals 11 divided by the sine of 63. 11 divided by sine of 63. That's going to round to 12.3. So x equals 12.3. In number 9, when we draw our right triangle, our right angle is M. Our next angle, N, is 25 degrees, and our last angle is P. We know NP is 10, and we want to find MN, which is X. So if we look at our sides here and we label, we have opposite, hypotenuse, adjacent. We know the adjacent and the hypotenuse, so we are using cosine. So the cosine of 25 is equal to x over 10, because x is on top, we're multiplying. So 10 cosine of 25. That's going to get us 9.1. In number 10 and 11, we do not have a right triangle. We have an isosceles triangle. So we are going to draw the height in. which is going to bisect the base into two congruent parts. So if we're looking for x right now, I'm going to call these each y and y. I'm going to focus on one triangle in order to find our variable. So we have opposite, adjacent, hypotenuse. We know the adjacent and the hypotenuse, so we're going to use cosine. So the cosine of 42 equals y over 18. So here we're going to multiply 18 cosine of 42 equals y. So we get 13.4. Now each part of y is 13.4, so if we're finding x, we need to add those together. So we get 26.8. In number 11, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to draw our height in, which is going to bisect this base into 10 and 10. So if we focus on one triangle, we have opposite, adjacent, hypotenuse. So again, we know the opposite and the adjacent, so we're using cosine. Cosine of 42 is equal to 10 over x. Here we're going to divide. X equals 10 divided by the cosine of 42. And we get 13.5.